I'd like to welcome everyone to the Stuart Heritage Museum's speaker at the Flagler. Particularly want to recognize Eula Clark, our favorite city commissioner in attendance. She's always here for us and very supportive of the museum and what we try to accomplish. Before we get into tonight's program, I'm going to take care of a little bit of museum business. Next month, November 11, we'll have a speaker here again on the House of Refuge and the restoration that's going on currently. Our speakers will be Jess Robinson and Kathleen Larson. Both are actively involved in the restoration of the House of Refuge. Come December, we don't have a speaker for December. We have our open house on December 6th. December 5th is the parade.
That's right.
Okay. We go to the parade on the 5th and we have an open house on the 6th at the museum. Love to have you all come in and share some holiday spirit with us. Going forward, January, we've got Martin County Sheriff is going to be here to tell us a little bit about what's going on in the county. So I look forward to having everyone here, and please invite some friends. I'd love to see us fill these chairs up. Tonight, we've got a crew, I won't say, we have a vast resource of knowledge of Hobe Sound and the history of Hobe Sound. I'm not going to go through introductions, I'm going to let them tell you who they are. So,
Harry MacArthur. My family came in 1952, and they came from Lake Worth.
My name is Kathy Falk Spurgeon. I think we were supposed to tell a little more. Did you say anything about Michigan or anything?
Nope.
Okay. So I'll tell my story. Harry is a native and I'm not. Because I came to Martin County when I was 3 months old in a basket on a train. I didn't have any option at all, so I didn't know where I was going or what to choose. My father bought property on Jupiter Island and on Hutchinson Island. And he said to my mother, "Where do you want to live?" And my mother said, "There's no electricity, there are no roads, there's no civilization on Hutchinson Island." Can you imagine? And Jupiter Island was developed. So we ended up on Jupiter Island. That's where I lived most of my life.
Good evening. My name is Alfred Miller, and I am a true native of Hobe Sound.
Yes.
On my father's side, his father was from Long Island in the Caribbean, Bahamas, and his mother was from Eleuthera. They connected in the Gomez area, and my father was born on a flower farm. It was called Spicer's Flower Farm, right off Gomez Road. His father at that point was the supervisor of the labor crew. And my father grew up a lot of his formative years on Gomez Avenue. And you couldn't hardly tell it now because there's not a whole lot of African Americans that live in that area. But once upon a time, it was a very vibrant area where I was told that almost 70% of the people that lived on Gomez Avenue were of African American descent.
Paula MacArthur Cooper. I'm Harry's sister. Kathy was my first friend when we moved to Hobe Sound and met her at the beach. So that tells the story, you know. Parents moved from Lake Worth, but really Michigan. Dad sailed on the Great Lakes, but then we would come down in the winter because the boats would be in dry dock, and so we'd go to Lake Worth, and he found the restaurant for sale, came up and looked at it while Mom was in the hospital having a sister Sally, and they decided, hey, I think we can do this. So we moved to Hobe Sound.
My name is Diana Parker Owens, and I am a real born true native of Hobe Sound. born in Stuart, at the old Stuart Hospital, and born at the Hobe Sound, and I'm still there, and I'm not going anywhere. But my mom was from Jupiter, and when she went away to college, she was in St. Augustine. She met my father there, and then she came down here and lived and worked at Stuart in 1943 at the Stuart High School, when it was, that's what I'm saying, or Stuart, what did they call it? The Stuart Colored School. The Stuart Colored, no, it wasn't training. It was the Stuart Colored School.
Yeah, originally, I think so.
Yeah, it was the Stuart Colored School. And so she worked there until she got transferred to Hobe Sound, and then it was the Dunbar Elementary School. My dad was a minister, and he actually grew strawberries in Hobe Sound, had a huge crop of strawberries out back at Hobe Sound. And when we did some living histories, they tell me that he had some on Bridge Road in Hobe Sound, downtown Hobe Sound, but I never knew anything about that. But he was a farmer and a minister, and he grew strawberries for a living in Hobe Sound.
My name's Pat Martin. My mother is Suzanne Diamond Martin. My grandparents came to Hobe Sound in the 30s originally to run. My grandfather he set up the Tangerine Theater on Jupiter Island, and then later started the garage on the island, and then bought what is our garage now on the corner of Bridge and Dixie in Hobe Sound, and we're still there. I was not born in Hobe Sound. I was born in Daytona, where my mom was teaching school, and but I've been coming to Hobe Sound my entire life, and then moved here when I graduated from University of Florida in the late 80s, and been running that business ever since.
I'm David Chambers.
I thought so.
And I have no idea how I got here.
I know how you got here.
That's the first one.
My grandparents moved here in the early 20s. And somewhere along the line, my wife has found out that they were, one of my grandfathers or great grandfathers or somebody was married to a Pittsford from over on Jensen Beach. I don't know that for sure, but she's found all that information out. But my dad started his electrical business in 1946, and we lived across from the high school in Stuart, and then we moved to Hobe Sound because he wasn't going to work in Stuart, he was going to work on Jupiter Island and in Hobe Sound. And they bought the house that Linda and I renovated in 1950 after the roof went off of our house up on Illinois Avenue. And except for 3 years in the Army, I've been there ever since, and don't plan on leaving.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for giving us the opportunity to talk about my hometown, my beloved hometown, Hobe Sound. I'm gonna mention Gomez because I'm from the north side of Hobe Sound. Gomez is where I grew up. My name is Lloyd Jones. I'm a Martin County native. I was born here April 2nd, in 1954. I kind of got a little joke about my birth. I think I was actually born April 2nd, April 1st. The doctor actually kind of gave my mother a reprieve by telling me I was born April 2nd. So my mother was told me I was crazy growing up, so I guess maybe that has something to do with that story. But like I said, I grew up in Gomez, Hobe Sound. I spent a lot of my life in both sections of the community, 3 sections in Hobe Sound, Banner Lake, Gomez, and then on Jupiter Island. That's where I spent most of my life history in childhood. On my father's side of the family, my grandfather, I found out, Louis Jones, was born the same day I was born, April 2nd, but he was born back in 1876, 1878. So I kind of found that out through doing some genealogy research. My father's family looks like they were in this area. I call it Dade County, Palm Beach County, as far back as the early 1900s when they were in Hobe Sound around 1913. They were in this area. They migrated from Alachua County, North Florida, Putnam County area into what was then Dade County, then becoming Palm Beach County, and then becoming Martin County. My mother's family on the other side, they migrated to Martin County from western Alabama, Moreno County area, little city. I'm sorry, Demopolis, are you familiar with it? Okay, but Demopolis, I believe, Alabama is the county seat there. They migrated from the Alabama area, that area into Mobile, Alabama, and eventually ended up in the Hobe Sound area. They actually migrated here along with the Petway family. It's my understanding. My grandfather's family was very close to the Petways in Alabama, and they all migrated together. What else can I say? That's part of my migration, I guess, with my family coming here.
What brought them here? What did they do?
My grandfather Lewis, he was into agriculture, into trucking. There's an old story in my family that says my grandmother Priscilla Kale married a poor boy, and being that my understanding is that when I look at the records, my grandfather, great grandfather Louis Kale, who was born in slavery. At some point in time, he had enough money accrued where he bought over 100 acres of land up there in North Florida. So my understanding is that, according from my cousins, that he was involved in the agriculture industry, citrus, had a little bit of money, and my grandfather, having migrated in from what it looks like Tallahassee area, came down into the Alachua County area, and he got involved, got a job with her father, and I guess they fell in love, and they ended up with 7 or 8 children. My father, Isaiah Jones, being one of them, and then they eventually made it down to South Florida, into Dade County, Coconut Grove area, I believe, and then migrated back north.
Working agriculture.
Right, working agriculture. My mother's side, I think my grandfather migrated here looking for work. My grandfather, well, I understand Jake Brown's my grandfather. Now I think most of you guys know my grandfather, Jake Brown, right? Yeah, my grandfather worked for the town of Jupiter Island for decades, but before then he was an independent contractor. He actually had a trucking company, and he hauled the trash and the garbage from Jupiter Island. Now, I remember that distinctly because he had 5 trucks. I used to tell him he stole trucks all the time. He bought me a dump truck, and he had his own gas tanks and his own mechanics and his own drivers. And he did that for quite a while. The business went defunct. He ended up becoming an employee for the town of Jupiter Island.
Can I ask a question? What about your life, and can you tell us the difference between life in the Gomez area, the North Gomez, and like the South Banner Lake or across A1A? What was it like growing up? Did you even cross over and go to church or school or something anywhere in that area?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I attended school in Banner Lake or Hobe Sound at Dunbar Elementary School.
Okay.
From grades 1 to grade 6. I also was able to, during the summertime, I would spend time at the Banner Lake Club. They had a summer program there for the boys. I think the guy by the name of Mr. Williams, I best I can remember, he was the director of that summer program. And I would spend my summers there. Boy Scout meetings, I attended in Hobe Sound, in Banner Lake area. Now in Gomez was where I had a lot of my primary activities. Of course, you know, in Gomez, you had to run the whole neighborhood. So I was just telling somebody a couple of days ago, when I was a kid growing up, we had a playground, but heck, my playground was the woods there in Gomez. I mean, where the hunting for rabbits and squirrels and birds. I mean, that's what we did. And we also played our little military games out there. We played our little war games out there. And that's what we did. I attended the New Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church from the time if I even knew I was going to church until I became an adult. A lot of my social activities, Christmas programs, or whatever activity was going on in the community, that came about because of the church, my church participation I was involved in.
Thank you.
Who was your first grade teacher?
My first grade teacher was her mother.
She taught me too.
I think her mother may have taught my mother.
She did.
And she was a great teacher. And she gave me a part in our first class play. I can still sing that song, but I don't carry a good tune these days.
Don't sing it.
Jake Brown was my hero.
Was he really married?
He was, because the reason why he was my hero, we didn't have garbage pickup at Hobe Sound. We burned the papers and buried the cans.
Right.
And Jake Brown would come to the company house to the south of us and to the north of us, and he'd pick up their trash. I always said, I want to be Jake Brown when I grow up.
Everybody wanted to be garbage man.
I know a lot of you are involved in special projects that are going to preserve the history of Hobe Sound. Would you like to talk about those?
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, our place is 100 years old, so that's a project I work on every day. And I'm also on the Hobe Sound Historical Society board with Paula, and we're going to be renovating the Hobe Sound FEC Railway Depot, which has been moved back into town. We're working with the county, and I'm sure as you guys work with the city, but the county's done with what they're going to do, and so we have to, our option to lease the building says that we have to come up with a plan, we have to have all the plans done with architectural drawings and so on, budget, and then once the county approves of that, we have to raise the money, and then once we raise the money, then we have to get it done. We've luckily gotten a local architect, Scott Hughes, to donate his services for the architecture. Bert Krebs from Innocenti and Webble is donating the landscape design for the park. Several of the tradesmen have said that they would donate their work, but we're still going to have to. For example, to put the authentic roof on the building is $70,000 because of to use the original materials.
Is Jupiter Island helping?
Well, so on the 15th of November, we're having an open house, and we're going to have all our budgets, all our pictures, all of our things set up, and we'd love to have everybody come down and see, and then we're going to start asking people for money. Our estimate to get this done is $1 million for a little train station. Correct terminology, which we've been told by the FEC railway historian, is railway depot.
It's a depot.
Train station, the station is the actual geographical location, and then the building is the depot.
Okay.
But we've already started collecting. We've got the gentleman who was the depot agent from 1939 to 1949. He was also the Camp Murphy depot agent. His grandson has donated a bunch of stuff. And so that project is ongoing. The big problem is Hobe Sound was never a town. It was always unincorporated. And when for example, there's an archive at the Florida History Museum in Tallahassee, and we've had researchers going through that. They found the plans for the Stuart station, so if you all want those, I got those. Got the plans for the Jupiter station, got the plans for the Jensen, not Hobe Sound. But Hobe Sound at that time was mostly owned by first it was the Florida Pineapple and Coconut Grove Association, and then the Indian River Association Limited, which is a British company. Those archives are at UF, and we're trying to see if we're hoping that there was some reason they built a station in a depot in Hobe Sound, and somebody had to have been writing back and forth asking for that. So, and then the other project I'll just talk, we're restoring the iconic Olympia street lights. We found one of the original fitters, which is the metal collar that the globe goes on, and we had those reproduced. Company was very helpful. They donated some of their work, but we had to pay a lot of money for that. And then we found what we think is the correct globe. They're going to be lit with solar power. So the night of the 15th, when we have our big thing at the depot, we're also going to have the lighting of the street lights along Dixie there. So you'll be watch us on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. So.
Can I have a question for you?
Sure.
On the train station depot, the railway depot, do you know if that building is of any particular vernacular, especially like the inside with wood, and is there any special craftsmanship, like carpentry, that needs to be done to help with that?
So the building has, we have pictures of about 7 different versions of it. In the feed store, there's a picture, and one end is an open porch, which was where they stored the baggage. That got enclosed. That is on a different level now than the rest of the building, which is a big ADA problem. That's one reason our architect is working so hard, because otherwise we can't use half the building. The interior was, when it got moved out to the Orange Grove and then to the polo field, they made that their sales office, and they made it all nice and pretty with modern paneling and modern drop ceilings and all that stuff. Somebody, I don't know who it was, got dumpsters brought in on the weekends and has ripped out most of the modern stuff. I couldn't tell you who that was, because the county doesn't let us do that. But you can see the original beadboard in the ceiling, which are big, high, 12-foot ceilings. And so we found the original walls behind all that stuff. So, but a lot of it's in pretty bad shape, so it will have to be replaced. We'll have to get the millwork done, and all that's going to be expensive too.
Thank you.
Anything to add?
Let me add it real quick. The one thing we're aiming for, because of course they want to know what we're going to do with it. This is a big question everybody wants to know. Well, what we want to do is, the theme of it will be how the train station was so valuable in the life of the Hobe Sound people that lived here. And we're going to incorporate that into the theme, you know, any of the exhibits. But we also want to have it so that the people of the neighborhood will be able to use it also. So all those things are really important to all of us. So that's kind of where we're heading with it. And we're very excited because this is a big step. And we're very lucky because it's very well taken care of.
You wrote a book.
I
You want to
did.
tell us about that? And
I wrote the book about Hobe Sound. They have it up here at the table. It's $45. It's mostly pictures, because I feel like people, if they see the picture, it tells the story. So that's kind of like my idea of the book. And yeah, it's like I didn't go into a lot of detail on every part of the thing, but enough to get your interest, like the Ashley gang, enough to get your interest. If you want more, then you can dive in and get more information on the Ashley gang. So that was kind of my idea behind the book.
Question?
Yes.
Will that railway depot be like a museum, or will it be half county park, half community? Or will it be strictly just something from the Hobe Sound community as a museum?
It will be the Hobe Sound Historical Society. We will be have exhibits there. It will be open to the public, so it will be kind of like how the feed store is, but on a much smaller scale, you know. And gravitate to facts and information about Hobe Sound and how the train station tied into everybody's life, because everybody that came, Kathy came down on the train, you know, so.
In my basket.
In a basket.
And then we went swimming.
And then we went swimming. Oh, one of the things she asked, and this is one of my stories I remember about living in Hobe Sound. Hobe Sound, when I moved here, I was like, I had just turned 6 years old. I was going to start first grade. So my whole life was the beach. We went to the beach every single day, the church, and the school. But one of the things, and of course living at the restaurant, we had like a lot, out west of town, we had ranchers that lived out there, and we called him Grandpa Sandy, but he had cattle and everything out there. Well, one night he had shot this rattlesnake that was like 8 foot long. It was huge. Anybody that knows anything about a rattlesnake, once they're dead, they're still moving. So he brought it into the restaurant. It was dark. He threw it on the front porch, and he was inside. So my sister and I, we're out on the front porch and we're standing on the chairs and the snake's wiggling all around, being crazy. All of a sudden, this car comes flying in the front of the restaurant, and these guys jumped out of the car real fast. Well, when they saw the snake, they jumped back into the car and headed down the road. And I went in and I told my dad, I said, I don't know, but these guys just, but they jumped out of the car and jumped back in. Come to find out, they robbed the guy down the street.
Snake, stop that.
I'd just like to back up a little bit because for the historical purposes of the recording, there's some stuff that I'd like to just make sure that we put on record. There were several areas where African Americans originally lived in what would be called, I guess, Hobe Sound proper. And so I'll start with the most northern point. Some of you may have heard of the hammock, Fruita hammock.
You say fruit on the TV every now and then on the weather.
And so if you don't know where Fruita hammock was, if you're aware of where the VFW is, right near the railroad track. And so if you proceeded south, maybe for about a quarter of a mile, and east to the Intercoastal Waterway, that was Fruita hammock. And a lot of the people who resided in Fruita hammock had the same last name that I have. Some of them were Mackeys. There were some Wileys that had property there. But my understanding is that that total area encompassed about 70 acres. Eventually, over time, some things happened. These people were bought out. There was a large conservation area with Maggie Herchella and Nat Reed that also helped put some money together to purchase the property. But then some of the landowners were able to sell outright, and they got, I guess, whatever it was that they got at the time. I think Lloyd Jones has already mentioned the Gomez. That would be the next township south from Fruita. And again, I think there's a great significance in saying that on the Gomez Avenue corridor, from nearly where the Hobe Sound Elementary School is now, nearly all the way up Gomez Avenue, a lot of that property was originally owned by African Americans. A lot of it was farmed. It was very close to the river, and they were normally 10-acre tracts. There was one gentleman by the name of Parson Lundy, who after a period of time, he started to buy the property on the other side of the railroad track. And so everybody thought, is this guy crazy or something? Why is he buying sugar sand? Well, because it was so cheap. The property that was really worth anything was closer to the river. It was more fertile, and all of these people were growing something. Then I'm gonna quickly move into west on Bridge Road, just west of Hobe Sound. The locals refer to it as the backwoods, and that's certainly what it was. It was a bunch of woods. It was, when we come through there now, we can see how the ditches are oftentimes dry. Well, when I was a kid, those ditches were never dry. It was always a place where you could go and you could fish. And there were a lot of acres there that were owned by African Americans who were farmers. A lot of them were the Prestons, like Diane spoke about her father. There was Sam Glover. I think even today the Petways own maybe about 25 or 30 acres there. There was Mr. Joseph Berrien. I believe today he still owns 5 or 6 acres there. And then the White family lived out there. And so from that point, and I'd like to say, and that's how my mother's side of the family got to Hobe Sound because they connected with a gentleman by the name of Grover Cleveland Preston. And Mr. Preston was a farmer. And eventually what happened is that people began to move into current day Banner Lake. And I was told that in the early days, there was actually a dump on the east side of Banner Lake between what would now be US 1. And eventually the town would begin to fill in. And the persons that worked not just in Fruita Hammock, but also in Gomez and in Banner Lake, these people would become a large part of the important backbone of the labor that would eventually become Jupiter Island. There was a question, Mayor, that you asked earlier about the construction of the depot building that Pat spoke about. I just happened to be there one day when he was there, and we looked under, and those depots, just like what was called, the other thing that I left out was what was called the section housing.
Yes.
And so the section housing would have been that when Flagler brought his railroad south into, all the way south into eventually Key West, there were people that lived along the railroad track. And so their job was that if something happened to the railroad track, then the labor lived close enough where they could go in and repair it. And so eventually these guys became known as section housing, the section men. And so these people were located in Port Salerno. They were located in Hobe Sound, in Jupiter, and everywhere along the south. There's not a lot of those housings that still exist today, but there is one that's in Banner Lake. I'm sorry, it's in Banner Lake, but it's right on Bridge Road. And then, Mayor, just for your knowledge, and you may already know this, there's two houses that are about 4 blocks from here that belong to Louis Leonard. They're over 100 years old. And those also were section housing. Thank you.
You know,
Could you tell us a little bit about the Banner Lake Club and what it means to the Banner Lake community?
Well, I can do that. And there was a need as Jupiter Island began to grow. And we got to realize that we're still talking about the 30s, not quite 1940 yet. The newest thing in the Banner Lake community in 34 would be the Dunbar Elementary School. And I think it's kind of been understated here just a little bit, the importance of what Diane's mother meant to not just the school, but also into the entire community. There was another gentleman by the name of Gilbert Miller. Gilbert Miller would be the guy who would take the hams and who would eventually, he would retire from the school board as the first black assistant superintendent. And these were all local guys. And so because of segregation, and you couldn't just go anywhere, someone came up with the idea that we need a social place, a building where we can go and maybe party on the weekend when we're not working on Jupiter Island. And there's a gentleman by the name of William Barstow. He came up with the money, and he would build the Banner Lake Club. The Banner Lake Club at that time would be probably one of the foremost buildings in all of Martin County, where black people could come, they could have a good time, they could host parties, they could hold Masonic events, there would be church repasts. The Banner Lake Club was just an incredible thing, but most importantly, William Barstow, which is probably, a lot of you are aware of him, because he would, in 1939, he would build the Banner Lake Club, he would build the only church on Jupiter Island, and he gave us most of all what all of us needed. He gave us the Martin Memorial Hospital.
The Stuart Hospital.
Could I ask a question, please?
Stuart Hospital.
Could you give some in-depth of, in Gomez, as a little girl, I recall a little center, a school that Mrs. Gertrude Hadaway was schooling. I don't know it really when that was built, but I do recall that center that being there in the Gomez area.
The two-story school, the two-story building.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because we had some great educators. We spoke a little bit about Miss Arabelle Parker, Gilbert Miller, but Mrs. Petway would at some point, I think she may have gotten like the teacher of the year or something. She was that kind of teacher that if you had a kid in school, you tried to steer your kid right into Miss Petway's class. Thank you.
That was a nice segue into my school. But first, kudos to the Railway Depot people, because I have a little t-shirt that says, "Preservationists save the world one building at a time." So there's your building, and good job. I'm mostly, we had fun too when we were growing up. We're sort of serious here. I went to the beach with Paula and her sisters, and
Every day.
I raised Harry, and if there's any problems
I have raised
with
Harry.
Harry,
Then,
we used to ride the turtles when the turtles were laying their eggs. Can't do that anymore. And we used to drop little stones on the sea cows from the top of the bridge. Never hurt them, never hit them. Now you call them manatees, but we of course call them sea cows.
Sea cows.
My great passion right now, I think some of you know that, is the rehabilitation of the Apollo School. On October the 19th, which is this Sunday, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the first class that was held in what was then called, for about a week, the Picture City School in the town of Olympia. So on October 19th, 1925, there were 6 grades in that school. There were about 30 children, and we have rehabilitated the school, and we use it as a community building. Half of it is used as a sort of similar to what the railway station depot is doing, but I guess their emphasis will be on railroads. Ours is sort of, we're calling it a repository of memorabilia, holding the tangible memories of Hobe Sounders. And the other half of the building, keep in mind this is an 1,800 square foot building, so we're not talking about something like this. We use for speaker series, we use for activities, we have Valentine's Day parties for children, we've had historic dinners, we've had Alfred speak, we've had Paula speak, we've had Pat's mother speak, we haven't had David speak, we've had Lloyd speak, we've had Alfred speak. Hey! It's a lot of speak. But anyway, ours is a privately owned building. It's owned by the Apollo School Foundation. It's one of the few privately owned historic buildings in Martin County. It's not taxpayer funded. We don't use any of your money to do what we do. We just spend a lot of time raising money and then giving back to the community. So if any of you, Mary Jo, I saw you got your phone out every time a date was mentioned. So Sunday at 4 o'clock on the school site, we're going to have a centennial celebration. We have former State Senate President Joe Negron speaking, as well as our County Commissioner Blake Capps. We're having the Boy Scouts do an honor guard and raise the flag. We've got a singer from the Pine School Pan Steel Band will play, and we've got the Rowdy Mix who are going to play. It's just going to be an afternoon of celebration of this school that was Paula mentioned it as, you know, one of the 3 pillars of growing up in Hobe Sound. It was just a very important part of Hobe Sound, and we're trying to keep that going. So we'd love to see you all. It's free, as I said. It's open to the public. We've got fans if it's hot. We've got a tent if it's cool. So we'd love to see you.
I want to say something.
Hello, all I got to say is, my mother said 50 years ago, if heaven's not like Hobe Sound, she's not going. I mean, it's just a very special place, and we've been able to enjoy it. And I'd like to talk about Alfred Miller here. He talked about Banner Lake Club. I don't know, 35 years ago, the Banner Lake Club had a section on the back of it that was kind of a lean-to or whatever, was covered. And the 2 of us closed it in. And the reason I'm telling you this story, I got the drywall, and I got 12-foot sheets of drywall, and it's in August. And we're trying to put it up in there. We got no air conditioning, and we're wringing wet. And he was just as happy and just absolutely fantastic. And what him and his family has done for the community is outstanding. And you know, I just thank him for it, because I mean, it's the entire neighborhood. They've been my neighbors, and I just, all my life, I mean, I loved it back in the day when they had so many businesses in Banner Lake. It was, you know, just thriving. We got all our eggs up there, and I'll tell you what, was that McLean? I can't remember where I got my eggs at. But I'd ride my bicycle up there and get eggs. I mean, it was just, Banner Lake was a big part of the entire community. It wasn't just for the African American community, it was for everybody. And to tell you how times changed, they would, probably the early 70s, they would shut down the road. They had the Dewdrop Inn up there.
That's right.
And I'll tell you what.
Somebody knows that place.
And
They've been hanging out there.
Starlight Garden, and they would close down Bridge Road from the stoplight, and it might not even been a stoplight, there might have been still caution light, all the way to the second road, and the guys would come up from Miami on the Harley Davidson, and they would stand out there, and I'm gonna tell you what, you talk about athletes, they would stand on the seats, they would do handstands, they do, and I mean, to me, there wasn't a better place than that. It was like the Super Bowl for us. Whenever they closed, we were out there, we were like, oh, it was just very fun for us, and I mean, I have so many great memories of that. I don't have anything but bragging.
Can I ask you, how many years is it, Harry and the Natives an active restaurant?
30, well, it's been an active restaurant for 73, but for 37 years of Harry and the Natives.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before that, what was it called?
It was a farm restaurant motel. Yeah, you know, it was, the buildings were red and white, and they ended up changing that from that. My dad painted the buildings white, and we had an old painter out there, yeah, painted it up, and then, you know, so it was just fun things and things. We were, I'd say probably the biggest thing is Hobe Sound. We were all poor. I'll tell you what, we didn't have anything. Well, I mean, we couldn't afford a comb. I mean, let alone anything else. You didn't want. It was just, but we all worked together. If you caught a fish, you had to get, you know, you caught 3 fish, you had to give at least 1 away. You know, because we were all in it together. I mean, yeah, nobody. I mean, if you had extra and stuff, everybody was in it. I mean, it didn't matter, and so it was just a great time and great community.
Question back there.
Oh, yes.
Okay, this is not for you, this is general.
Oh, here.
So whoever's got the answer.
Diane wants to talk.
Diane.
Yeah.
Diane got the answers.
Okay.
She got I tell you what.
Question. What's your question?
Okay, I was asking about the St. Ange grocery.
I was just gonna talk about that.
We went to school with a person who was from that family, the St. Ange family. Jack King was his name.
No.
We
know Jack King.
Jack King just passed
away.
Oh,
Yeah.
he did?
Yeah.
When I met him, his family still owned the St. Ange grocery, and I expected it had been owned by that family for a lot longer than that, but I don't go back any further than that, so.
You know, I have to
Anybody
say-
else knows anything about it?
Let me just add this real quick.
Jack King's, because he was part of the St. Ange family, but Jack King's stepfather was the one who owned Hope Grove, and he's the one that bought the train station and moved it out west of town. So since you brought him up, I can throw that in real quick.
Glad I brought him up then, because that is part of the story of it.
Here you had a really nice way to end the talk. I'd like to hear what was the best part of growing up in the Hobe Sound area? What did you do? Some of you already touched on it.
Diana wanted to talk about her project first.
I want to talk about, in Hobe Sound, a lot of people do not realize that there is a cemetery there off of Kingsley Street and Gomez. And I can remember my mom calling the area where that cemetery is the McLean Quarters.
Right.
So when I hear the word McLean Quarters, I assume that was a set of black people that lived there, because it was a church and it was the graveyard and it was homes there, because they wouldn't have called it the McLean Quarters. And through the Martin County Black Heritage Initiative, we did a ground penetration there, and it was 450 graves. I mean,
We discovered over 600.
over 600 graves with a mass grave that was there, that's out there buried in that ground now.
A mass grave?
A mass grave, right. And that's very dear to me and to Lord, because we have family buried there. I have a brother that I will never know where he is.
So do we. Is my aunt, my aunt.
And she has family there. It's probably what, 20 graves that you can pick out?
Visible.
Visible?
Maybe it was 27.
Yeah, but some of it's falling apart.
There's some vandalism.
Yeah, the vandalism is very bad there right now. But the newer ones is still there, but over the years with vandalism, with kids riding their motor scooters and stuff all over the cemetery, we've tried to preserve it, and right now the corporation that owns the cemetery, we don't own it, it's a church corporation that owns it, and we've gotten them to having it cleaned up every monthly.
Is that the Bible college?
No, this is up off of Kingsley Street. You have to go up north from the Bible College, or Kingsley Street, and you take it, and you turn up and go in there, and the street is actually paved now. But that is a very important part of history there, for Black history, because we don't know who's out there buried, other than what people can say to us that they have family buried there. And when, like I say, they came from the college over in Fort Myers, and they did ground penetration, and they found that many bodies in that ground.
Do you know if any of those subdivisions took up any of that land, or was that land still cemetery and church land, or do you think?
It's still church land, the church still owns that land.
So there's no homes built on top
No,
of it?
there's 4 acres, 4+ acres there.
So what church?
It was African Methodist Episcopal, AME. Mhm. Right. My dad was a minister there at that church at one time. I have his calling papers found in my mom, and they're all in bits and pieces. He was a minister there at that church. And I don't know, but like I say, we never knew where they buried my brother when he was born, because back in the days, I guess they didn't take the wife if the baby was born in the hospital when they died. They took care of it before the lady got out of the hospital. But my mom would go there and try to find it, and she said, "Oh, I'm not gonna look for it. It's too much to do." But I wanted everyone to realize that we do have a cemetery here in Martin County, and they've done a lot with the one there on Monterey Road. That one looks very good, and Indian Town has another cemetery. But Hobe Sound, that one was a big one. We pulled records from the funeral home, Stone's Funeral Home in Fort Pierce, and it's saying that they buried these people in Martin County. So we're assuming that some of those people were buried there.
Can I ask Lloyd about that a little bit?
Sure.
The whole Moses project, and
Yeah.
can you talk about it and how people can come and help clean up
Well,
the
no,
cemetery?
we're not doing it anymore.
Oh, you're not?
We have
Okay.
services now, remember I said that?
Okay, well, okay, so let's know then, bring us up to date.
Yeah, in regards to the, I refer to it as being the Gomez Pioneer Cemetery. The cemetery, ice was in place there before the church was built in 1913, 1915. Albert was speaking to some of the landowners there in Hobe Sound, African-American landowners in Hobe Sound. And a lot of them, I would say most of them are interred in that cemetery there in Gomez. Pop Lundy, he's one of my heroes. I love him to death. He's there along with his wife and some of his I believe his sisters or sister-in-law. Right now, there's always a need to do some type of work down there at the cemetery. And I want to put emphasis on the fact that cemetery is the oldest archaeological site we know of in Hobe Sound right now. It's not a building, but it is a structure. I look at it as being a structure because it was archaeological meaning or significance. The cemetery there, as Diana indicated, that we did ground penetrating radar down there, and I really thank Commissioner Harold Jenkins for arranging for us to do that. There's over 600 barriers, unmarked barriers there, shall I say, including the 27 visible barriers that we know they're there. Now, the thought is that this is a complete African-American cemetery. That may not be true. I mean, history has many different stories. But yeah, I don't think we'll be able to actually be able to prove if it's everybody buried in the cemetery is African-American descendants. But I would say, as far as I know, the majority are. That cemetery is very important to the community. As a child growing up, you mentioned cleanups, Dr. Clark. Every year when I was a boy growing up, there was masses of people into the cemetery, and there was a general cleanup of the cemetery every Memorial Day weekend. And I remember those people, those old women down there, like Dean, like your grandmother and my grandmother, man, they sang those Negro spirituals, boy, and it just brought chills to me right now just to think of some of the songs I used to hear down there. If a child wanted to hear about their relatives, which my father died when I was 2 years old, I didn't know much about him. I'm learning more about him now, but if you want to know about a relative who was deceased, man, go to a cemetery cleanup, because those old folks will tell you their stories about your family and your family members, and I enjoyed that all the time. But then I was able to bond with my father more during that time. Diana mentioned the McLean quarters, and again, one of the landowners, John McLean, he's interred there at the Gomez Pioneer Cemetery. So there's a lot of history there for the community to delve into. A lot of Hobe Sound pioneer history, shall I say, and our pioneers are there, whether they're African Americans or whatever race of descent. Those are our pioneers, our American pioneers. And I look at this as being an American history project, and in general, that's how I look at it. So there are humans there, and there are humanities there, and we need to allow them to speak from where they are, which we've been doing, which we've been trying to do.
Can I ask the railway guy?
We know it's the right topic.
I think Alice Lockhart had done some work, and she talked about, especially from this perspective, it was about Black people in the Hobe Sound area and other areas, Port Salerno, whatever. They took the railroad at all these little stops and went to Jensen Beach to meet with others, or to Vero Beach or something. Do you guys, what was like family life like that you've heard people talk about? People just use, we have like 3-4 railway stops in Martin County.
Yeah, but the train always go ahead. I was gonna say, the train didn't stop at all those stops.
Okay.
Yeah, for most of the modern history, which I mean after the 20s, Hobe Sound was what they called a whistle stop or a flag stop. So if you were on the train coming from New York or whatever, you would tell the conductor, I'm getting off at Hobe Sound. It'd be on your ticket. And if you were at Hobe Sound and wanted to catch the train, they would have to signal. And we still have, because we have the transportation business, we still have they're like big battery flashlights and we have regular gas lanterns too, that, if the train was coming at night, my grandfather would stand out there and wave this thing and hope the train stopped. If it didn't, he'd have to get in the car and drive really quickly up to Stuart.
Lucy Wethington talked about how she and all her girlfriends, which would have been your mom, they would take the train up to Stuart to the Lyric Theater to see the movies, go shopping. See? Yeah, you remember? Yeah.
We used to do it to West Palm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the happiest day I had was when I had Douglas Miller, Leona Ferguson, Tanner McLean, and another person. That name will come to me in a minute. And I'll tell you what, they talked about those trains going up and down the track. They were going to the movie theater,
They go to
going
movies,
back and
go
forth,
shopping.
going shopping too. They called the train number out, the 27, the 35s, or whatever the numbers were.
Red Rooster.
Yeah, yeah, but that's one of the greatest days I had. That I had was when Mrs. Ferguson invited me to her house. I had the 4 or 5 of them in the same room. We did an oral history session with them, and man, they lit the room up. They would talk about their railroad and taking transportation up and down their railroad. I want to say one thing too. You all talk about the nightclubs in Hobe Sound, but I think the most prestigious nightclub was in Gomez. The Little Pearl. The Little Pearl was the place, and I grew up on the same street with the Little Pearl. And people came from all over the Little Pearl. And I'll tell you something. That's the first time I ever heard Casey and the Sunshine Band play. Okay.
They had
All those big names came to Gomez down there to the Little Pearl. Okay. A lot of big name performers came down. I heard them all, man. I rocked all night long, guys.
What was that street for the Little Pearl?
Right at the highway. 60 highway. Everybody else?
He's gonna add.
Go ahead, man.
What's your question?
I just didn't really feel like I got an answer to the question, or didn't ask it right about the grocery. It was a very old building from the local.
St. Orange.
I have a story I'd like to tell you, but just the environment of Hobe Sound overall, it was one where, regardless of your color, we all work together to improve the circumstances of the overall community. And I think that was probably the most beautiful thing. My mom, Adele Miller, she passed before I was 9 years old. And as a result, I spent a lot of time with older relatives in my family. And one of my uncles was Rufus Bartlett. And Rufus Bartlett once recounted to me a story whereby he and someone else had gone into the St. Orange store. And what we talked about the railroad a lot, but what we also have to realize is that Hobe Sound, almost like it is now, is somewhat of a seasonal town. So when the snowbirds go north, nearly all the town went north. And when the snowbirds came back, that's when everybody came back. And so I don't know if what I'm about to say was maybe off season, but he said that him and another guy walks into St. Orange grocery. And maybe St. Orange wasn't doing so well at that time, but he asked for their checks. Can you guys give me your checks to help me kind of get through this? But you can take anything that you want out of the business and take it home to support your family. And my uncle said that he and the guy that was with him, they cashed their checks and they gave the money to Mr. St. Orange. And so it's that kind of spirit of helping each other. I think that's helped us all to get along. And I think the other thing that's important to remember, we spoke about the Gomez Cemetery, but also in Banner Lake, we have the Florida Memorial Cemetery. And I think that if you were to visit there, just the visit itself is a testament to the fact that this was not just an ordinary town. If you visit that cemetery, you'll see that there's a large percentage of veterans there. I'm talking like World War I, World War II, Korean, Vietnam. And so what would that say to you? That would say that the communities at large was filled with a lot of people who had worldly knowledge. Gilbert Miller, I think that he actually fought in the Battle of the Bulge, where he earned medals. I mean, he was in the thick of the fight for the justice of America. And before I forget, I'd like to mention that in 2013, my young cousin, Justin Johnson,
Yes, sir.
was in Bagram, Afghanistan. And the enemy shot a missile into the base and they killed him. He was only 25 years old. But this was just the spirit, I think, in terms of Hobe Sound itself. And before I get off the Florida Memorial Cemetery, I do want to say that Joseph Berrien, Mr. Joseph Berrien, who's over the Boy Scouts, and they were renowned for their drum corps. Everybody wanted them for Christmas parades, but he was deceased 10 years ago. And the call went out for somebody to step up and manage this cemetery. Well, I attended 2 meetings, and I probably should have skipped the second one. Because at the first one, nobody wanted to take on the job. At the second one,
You were nominated.
Mr. Leroy Thompson nominates me to manage the cemetery. That was 10 years ago, folks.
And you've done a spectacular job.
But to his testament, and I want this on tape, that Mr. Thompson and Charles Berrien, they've been with me every step of the way, and I think what we were able to accomplish is a wonderful thing. But then I want to turn back to my right to this gentleman. Now, when Harry spoke about those motorcycle guys,
Yes, sir.
that's why it's good to have this panel here. I totally forgot about that. And then as soon as he started to talk about it, it was like, bam, he's right. I remember that. They block off that road and those guys were like acrobats flying up and down Ridge Road.
Block off the whole street.
And unless I forget, I'd just like to say that, yeah, my wife and I and Geraldine and some others, we've been involved in a lot of things in Banner Lake. But whatever task it is that you undertake, it's a heck of a lot easier when you know you got somebody there working along with you. And
Amen.
this gentleman, Harry MacArthur, if I had 1,000 words, I really couldn't do justice in terms of just saying how he
Steps in.
if I needed somebody, that's where I'm going. I always got a yes. That's why I went there. And when I was a little kid growing up, and it was Christmas time, and Hobe Sound was connected with Jupiter Island, and all the kids in town would be out waiting for Santa to show up. And then all of a sudden, Mr. Spurgeon, we would hear these sirens, and we knew that Santa was on his way, and everybody just to charge in the air. And for the last 30 years, this man has brought Santa to the underprivileged kids of Hobe Sound.
We're all family. Listen, you keep talking, I'm gonna cry, so listen, I'll tell you what, I cry, I'm sorry.
I haven't heard anything about the historical area in Gomez about the Peddlewick Grocery.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, what would you like to know?
Okay, for
2
my
for
knowledge.
1 for a penny, 2 for penny cookies. Let's start there.
Originally, it was, for my knowledge, it was Miss Olive. I don't know her husband. Okay, so help me.
Miss Manny Mae Petwood.
Is Annie?
Manny Mae.
Matt, that's right, Miss Maddie.
Miss Manny, we call her Miss Manny.
That's right. So I recall their house that used to sit on the hill and she used to walk down the road,
The big
over the
house.
store, correct.
Yeah.
And that building is still there, I mean, the store in
That
general.
grocery store is still there.
Right,
when you want
and,
to get.
that store is how many years?
Does it still function? Is it?
Yeah,
It's still
absolutely.
going, I just there.
It's a neighborhood grocery store.
It got to be close to 100.
That store was in place.
85 years
It's really old, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, that store was it was a hurricane bunker, and it's been some of everything for that community there in Gomez, and along with the local store, place up a road.
Okay, I just wanted to mention because being a child raised up in that area as well, I recall going there and we loved the little pinwheel cookie and
Yeah.
she was always there.
And you
Yeah.
brought
She
your
was
bottles
always there.
back.
She
You
played
brought
up.
bottles back, you collected bottles.
Yeah,
And you
return
brought
the bottles.
Return your bottles and you got.
Absolutely.
2 cents.
5 cents.
Yeah,
Did y'all do that too?
Yeah, what I liked about it was on Fridays and Saturdays, there was a gentleman, he was a vendor, Reverend Perry. They call him the record man. And he would be in town, he would play his spirituals. And people would come out and buy records from him. I don't know if you happened in Hobe Sound or not.
It happened.
Yeah. He was out there. And I gotta tell you something, this man, it was kind of fascinated me. There was a guy who used to come to Gomez, and he would dress up in a devil's uniform, and he would chase us around the streets.
Miss Ruth Reed husband.
It was that what it was?
Yes, the lady
This
that's
guy, this guy would just show up out of nowhere,
Yep, that's
and
it.
we'd be playing marbles on the street or something, man. When that guy got out of that car, man, like, damn, like, what's going on?
He ran, he rode around like that. Oh,
Did he?
it wasn't on Halloween. We be walking down the road and next thing you know,
That's what it
some
was.
man ride with a mask on. Or
Yeah,
he step
yeah.
out the car, fully dressed as a woman.
Yeah, we thought Miss Maddie had him, and Miss Maddie had him coming to the store because some
He was
kids
funny.
were stealing from her. And we thought that was kind of like a crime deterrent, but this guy was real, huh?
He was real.
He chased us, but he couldn't catch us though.
I have a question about Doc Myers. Does anybody have anything to say about Doc Myers?
Great
Who
guy.
remember when he first came to town?
The historical position.
Doc Myers?
Yeah, we.
He was an active doctor.
I know.
That was big stuff when he came.
We knew Doc Myers, and you know what, and the thing is, Doc Myers came to town for the juke drive, and that's why he did. I'll tell you what, with us and most of Hobe Sound and everybody else, we all came to Stuart. You know what, and you didn't have many things that with us, with Doc Parker. You know what, even after he retired, you went to his house and you went around to the back door and you walked in the back door and you rang the bell and you sat there and he'd come out and give you a shot or whatever, but you know, I think in those days we didn't get sick
No,
much.
we did not get sick.
Nowadays, these kids and everybody getting sick all the time, everybody getting this and that. I don't know what we were doing, but it was a lot better back then. You know? And I mean, yeah, but Doc Myers was more uptown, you know what, he was, and I mean, he did home visits on the island. And I mean, that was a very special thing to have a doctor at that time, because Jupiter or Stuart would not go to them at that time. And I think Barstow brought Doc Myers to town, I think. So if you want, I think that's how it worked out.
He was on staff at Martin.
Yeah, he was on staff, but I mean, I think he was brought to town just for Jupiter Island for
He
David.
had an office downtown Hobe Sound.
He worked
Yeah.
at the nurse's station over there.
Yeah. See, David had all the answers, not me.
Can I ask about the mango orchards just in that eastern area between Gomez and A1A, like some of those?
They were delicious.
I don't know who owned it.
That was actually, where, I'm not gonna, Mr. Moore bought the property, which is now Graham Boat Ramp. And, they were the grandparents of Jimmy Graham's wife.
Okay.
We think of, yeah, but he owned all that property. There's like a whole story, there's a whole story about him, it's fascinating, but he and his brother were going down the river and they saw the property and he bought the property. And then during the Picture City and everything, he sold it. But he had it as a farm. I mean, he did the mangoes, he had orchards, you know, all that. And so he sold that property for like $1 million or something. It's like, I don't remember the exact amount. It's in the book. But he ended up having to take it back because then when the crash, he and his family moved to California. When the crash, then they came back and they lived there. And Marietta Graham was the daughter, and she married Jimmy Graham. And they inherited the property, and then they lived there. But that's where all those mango trees, that from Cross Rip going north, you know where I mean, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. All those, and it was solid mango trees back then. It was a huge orchard. Oh, yes.
There was a citrus grove in the back as well, was there not?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, there was some
Question.
citrus
Yes.
in the back. Yeah.
So in Banner Lake, I remember Miss Essie Baker
That's a big.
and Miss Louise as the corner store, grocery
And Miss
store.
Watson's.
So did they sell meat? Because I know they had canned goods when I was a little girl.
No, they didn't sell fresh meat.
They didn't, so you.
The only person that sold sliced meat was Miss Turner.
And Mr. Bosch, the Clemens.
Miss Turner sold slices of cheese and slices of bologna. I think she might have had ground beef. I'm not sure.
So everybody had to go to St. Orange to get.
No, we went to Miss Cohen.
Yeah, there was Cones, there was St. Ange's. I was gonna talk about St. Ange's, because they wanted to hear about St. Ange's. St. Ange's grocery store had everything you could imagine, basically catering to Jupiter Island. They had delivery trucks, everything could be called up, delivered. They had a full meat market with everything you could imagine, right down to chocolate-covered grasshoppers. If that's what you wanted, you could buy chocolate-covered grasshoppers there, every kind of fancy wine and cheese and everything.
It wasn't the poor people's store.
No, but there were two different prices. So if you were Jupiter Island, that was one price, and then if you were the poor people on this side of the river, that was a different price. So, but one thing about Mr. St. Ange, where he lived on Sierra Street, but he had a mango tree. But you better not pick up, if a mango hit the ground, you better not pick it up, because he's gonna sell that in the store. There was no taking, but Mr. Cone, we always did Mr. Cone's grocery store. We loved Mr. Cone. And when we were in 3rd grade at the school, we had nickel multiplication tables. And if you got 100 on the nickel multiplication tables, then you'd get a nickel and you'd be able to go down to Mr. Cone's and get a popsicle.
Where was that located?
They just tore it down.
They just tore that building down. That big 2-story building.
That's when Chamber Electric, y'all was in that building. The post office was in that building at one time.
A little bit down from the St. Orange store.
Okay.
Solo Brothers.
It ended up the Tucker building. Pardon?
That Frank building.
How was
And Mayhem.
it?
St. Ange's?
When was St. Ange's?
St. Ange's grocery store, I believe, they started out where
Right on the
where
corner.
Taste Restaurant was. Originally, that was built in 1922, 3, 4, and it had a 2nd floor. And during the 33, so St. Ange's started their grocery store in that building. And during the 33 hurricane, the 2nd floor went off. And there's and in the book, there's a picture of Donnie St. Ange sitting in the bathtub. No, bathtub or toilet, anyway. And then they built the new store then, which was where, and it was smaller, and then they added on to it.
Can you tell us a little bit about the history of Nat Reed, Hobe Sound Utilities? You know, anybody knows anything about that?
Have we run over our time?
Yes, you
She's sitting here going,
Okay. The last 5 minutes.
you can see, we will keep going forever.
And my mom wasn't here and she would have been talking most whole time.
I'm trying to be courteous, and I held my hand up for
Can we get
5
one
minutes.
One thing about Banner Lake that I do love and I do remember very, very well, it's the baseball games. They had the baseball.
Oh,
games.
yeah.
That was the place to be.
That's it.
That was the place to be on the Sundays, man. Gee, those guys play some baseball.
They were the champions, they were the
Yeah.
champion baseball players.
Also,
We traveled all
the
over the
Martin
state.
County High School State Championship team, basketball team, came out of there, what, 72 or 73?
72.
That was a whole starting team,
That's
came
right.
out of Banner Lake.
Pretty much.
Smoking Kitchen, Curtis Blatch.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, man.
But that came out of that little area.
Roy Parks, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Okay, Gail, what's your question?
Okay.
Gail,
Gail,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Gail.
I got two things, maybe three, but two. I want to talk a little bit about when you were talking about the mangroves and the McLean. Alfred, can you just tell us a little bit about that, and then also about growing up. I grew up in Banner Lake, and about growing up, how the youth programs came into the community, and who were our I will say directors per se. And another thing too, when I was a girl growing up in the Banner Lake community, my grandmother would send us across over to Mrs. Cohen's, and then at Mrs. Cohen's is where she would get like the sliced meat and everything, which was down from St. Orange. And one thing about Mrs. Cohen's, she always let my grandmother run a tab. So once my grandmother's tab was where it needed to be, my grandmother would send us over and it would be paid for. So I just want to say that about Mrs. Cohen's.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I will touch on this, and Gail raised a great point that I'm also writing a book, but in my book, I refer to the process. Some people, it's almost like buying on credit now. Right. So 90% of the businesses that were run back then, you ran on like a book. So
My dad ran gas taps.
So you
for the gasoline.
show up, they write your name down, and then at the end of the week, when you got paid, if you were responsible, you were supposed to come back in and square up. You know, but they were aware that occasionally some things would happen. And I really believe that most of those tabs, yes, they depended upon them, but they knew that somewhere behind those tabs, there were kids. So it was not always the adult that showed up to get the meat or the loaf of bread or cooking oil. Oftentimes it was the kid that would show up to say, hey, my mom sent me, and they give it to you and you write it down. And I need to take this plug by saying my grandmother's business was a dewdrop in. And
She ran a tab. She had a tab.
and that's how we ran the business primarily. But you know, one thing that I always like to say is that my grandmother was not a really tall lady, but she was all business lady. And so, you know, we ran that tab all week. And boy, around 6 o'clock, if those guys weren't coming in there to pay that tab off, you probably thought she was a drunken sailor or something, because she couldn't really lay those curse words down. But she ran a really good business, and just going back to the Banner Lake Club, I think Lloyd said that the first director that came in, and these people were brought in by Jupiter Island, what's now known as the community chest. The first guy came from Atlanta. His name was Benny Williams, and these were city guys. And some way or another, I think if you look at the history of the Clarks on Jupiter Island, they're somewhere connected to what we used to call the Avon sellers, the Avon people. And so after Benny Williams left, I guess he had to get back to the city. The next guy that came was Marion Herbst, M.L. Herbst. And he established, I think somebody said it already, one of the most successful youth baseball teams on the East Coast of Florida. And then he eventually entered the school system, where I think in a yearbook somewhere, there's a couple of pictures of him. But he was always my mentor. and he retired from the school system as the assistant superintendent of schools. And Harry, you get the last word.
I just want to thank everyone for showing up. I'll tell you what, this is amazing. I love hearing everybody's wisdom up here.
We'll do
It
the
was,
Harry Hernandez.
yeah, we can do that. It would be fantastic. Would love to do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
It's
having
been
us.
fun. Bye.
Thank you again. Great job.
My thanks to all participants here. Hearing the stories. You guys are working to preserve the history, the heritage of your community. And I commend you for that. It's something we need to do. I hope that 50 years from now, 70 years from now, our grandchildren are coming in and sharing stories about what it was like now. I don't know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But, it's important that we continue the story. It's important that we share the story with the newcomers, the damn Yankees. Because this is our heritage. This is what they've come to, and they need to appreciate it like we appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Paula's book's up by the door. Please, if you'd like to have a copy, it looks quite interesting. Also want to mention that there's a hot rod swap meet and flea market at the Diamond Garage on October 25th from 9 to 3 p.m.
Thanks, Ted.
Sounds like sounds like a thing to do.
Ted did it, not me.
And to y'all, thank you for coming out.